The hot sun beat down on Grandma Pearl's little wooden porch as she sat in her rocking chair, clutching a yellowed photo of her late husband. Her wrinkled hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from age. She was 92, sharp as ever and stubborn as a mule. Her small ranch on the edge of town had been in the family for generations. It was peaceful, quiet, until the black SUV rolled up. 3 men in matching polo shirts with clipboards got out. Their faces were blank, but their eyes scanned her property like wolves circling a rabbit. One of them stepped forward, sunglasses on, and without so much as a greeting barked, "Ma'am, you're violating HOA landscaping codes. These fences are not up to standard. You'll need to remove them immediately." Pearl slowly leaned forward in her chair, her voice steady. "This is my land. I'm not in your little club." The man snorted. "This entire area falls under our jurisdiction now. You didn't respond to the notices we sent." "I don't use email," she replied simply with a slow blink. "We posted the notices on your barn door last month. You ignored them." Pearl didn't flinch. "I thought it was junk. My barn doesn't need rules." The man's face hardened. "If you don't comply, we'll start fining you. Daily. And if it gets serious enough, we can legally file for property seizure. Understand?" Pearl didn't say a word. She slowly stood up from her rocking chair. Her back was slightly bent, but her eyes stared at the man down with the strength of 100 storms. "You do what you think you can, boy. But this ranch has stood longer than your little rulebook. You ain't scaring me." Just then one of the men pulled out his phone, snapped a photo of her barn and said loudly, documenting the violation. And that's when it happened. The 3 of them didn't notice the big red truck rolling in from the dirt road, leaving a storm of dust in its trail. But Pearl did. She smiled. The truck skidded to a stop and a tall figure stepped out. The sun caught the shine of polished boots. A buzz cut under a crisp, white marine cover. The metals glinting on his chest screamed honor, courage, and strength. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked calmly, walking straight toward the group with commanding confidence. Pearl's eyes sparkled with pride. "Boys, meet my son." The men froze as the Marine stepped up. One of them stuttered, "And who are you?" "I'm Staff Sergeant Jack Carter, United States Marine Corps, and this land belongs to my mother. If you've got something to say it to me." The clipboards dropped just a little. Jack stared them down, and then pulled out his phone. "I hope you're filming this," Pearl whispered with a grin. Cut to black. 3 weeks earlier. Grandma Pearl had just returned from the town grocery store, a paper bag full of tomatoes, flour, and her favorite peppermint candies tucked safely under her arm. The gravel crunched beneath her worn boots as she walked past her rusting mailbox, one that had her late husband's name still painted on it, C. Carter. He'd built that mailbox himself when they first moved onto the ranch in 1951. She never wanted to change it, but something was different. A sign had been staked in the middle of her front lawn. Bright red and white with capital letters that shouted like a drill sergeant. "Property under new HOA supervision. Violations will be enforced." Pearl froze. "HOA?" she whispered aloud. "I've lived here longer than those houses have existed." Her neighbor, Old Man Thompson, was passing by on his tractor and waved. Pearl flagged him down. "Thompson, what's all this mess? When did an HOA pop up around here?" He shut off his engine and leaned over the wheel. "That new developer, Broadstone Estates. They bought up land behind our lots. Built a bunch of those fancy homes last year. Now they're forming some homeowners association trying to rope us all in. But we're not part of it." Pearl said. "They can't just include us." Thompson frowned. "That's what I thought. But they're claiming the property lines now technically fall within their boundary expansion. Got some lawyer nonsense behind it." Pearl's blood ran cold. "So they can just take my land?" He shook his head. "Not legally. But they're sneaky. They'll make your life miserable till you give up. They already got Miss Clarice to sell last month. Said they'd fine her every week over her paint color." Pearl clutched the bag tighter. She looked back at the sign on her lawn. That was the beginning. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Her water pressure dropped until her kitchen sink was a dribble. When she called the water company, they said it was an outside restriction order pending HOA compliance. The next morning, the power flickered and died. She sat in the dark with no refrigerator and no air conditioning. A cold letter arrived that afternoon from the Community Standards Committee, saying her barn was a visual disturbance to surrounding residents and had to be painted or removed. "They can't do this," she said to herself, lighting a candle in the dark. "This ain't right." But the worst was yet to come. The following Sunday, a group of HOA members, about 7 of them, pulled up in matching black golf carts. They parked in a circle like a siege and started pointing at her chicken coop, her tool shed, her grapevines. Pearl stepped outside, her hair tied in a neat bun, apron still on. She marched right up to the nearest one, a woman in high heels and a stiff ponytail, holding a clipboard with tabs color-coded. "Ma'am," the woman said sharply, "your grapevines are growing onto community fence lines. This violates Section 14 of the Landscape Code. Your shed has a rusted roof, Section 9. Your chickens exceed the noise limit for residential harmony, Section 21. Pearl didn't blink. "There is no community fence. That's my land. My grapes. My chickens." The woman didn't flinch either. "You now fall under HOA district lines. You have 30 days to correct or remove all violations, or face daily penalties. If ignored, you could face property reclamation under Neighborhood Ordinance 38C. You come onto my land again," Pearl said calmly, "I'll release the rooster." The woman blinked. "He bites," Pearl added, eyes narrowing. They backed off, but not before taping 3 more violation slips to her mailbox, barn door and porch. That night, Pearl sat at the dinner table with a bowl of soup she barely touched. The farmhouse was quiet. Too quiet. She missed her husband. She missed the days when the land was simple. Free. But she wasn't going to give up. She walked into her living room and dusted off an old wooden box beneath her sofa. Inside, wrapped in a handkerchief, was a rotary phone with only one number taped to the side. Jack, baseline 1. She hadn't called him in a long time. He was always away. Missions. Bases. Conflicts. And she never wanted to worry him. But this was different. She dialed the number with shaking fingers. "Hello?" came the voice, deep, strong, familiar. "Jack," she whispered. "They're trying to take the ranch." Silence. Then the calmest but most serious words she'd heard since her husband died. "Stay put, Ma. I'm coming home." The red truck barreled down the road, crushing gravel under its tires like thunder. Pearl was on the porch in her rocking chair, sipping tea like it was any other day. The HOA team had returned. They didn't know what was coming. And that's when Jack stepped out. Tall, broad, in full uniform. His boots shined like steel. His face was unreadable. He walked right up to them, pulled out his phone, dialed, then said, "Get me the county zoning board. Now." Jack's voice was sharp, commanding, and cool as steel. As he spoke into the phone, the HOA officials stood frozen like statues. They didn't know whether to walk away or stay and fight, but something in the way Jack stood said they wouldn't win. "I need zoning documentation and historical land ownership records on parcel 48C22, Jack said into the phone. "Yes. The Carter Ranch. Owned continuously since 1951. "No, I'm not asking. I'm requesting to be a decorated active duty officer and son of the rightful owner." He paused, then added calmly, "And you might want to flag this call for legal review." Then he hung up. Silence. The HOA rep, the same woman with the clipboard from before, stepped forward and tried to regain her confidence. "Look, sir, we're not trying to intimidate anyone." Jack stepped forward, towering over her. "You sent legal threats. You cut off my mother's water and power. That's harassment. You're not a resident," she snapped, raising her voice. "You have no authority here." Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out his military ID, holding it in her face. "I don't need to be a resident to stand on my mother's land. I have authority everywhere I stand in uniform. Do you understand that, ma'am?" Her eyes flicked to the ID, then to his boots, then to the medals on his chest. Jack leaned closer. "This isn't some gated community power trip," he said. "You're playing games with a war hero's mother. And I promise you, this won't end well for you." Pearl smirked quietly behind him. Later that evening, Jack and Pearl sat on the porch together, watching the sunset spill golden light across the fields. Jack had changed out of uniform but still moved with that same military sharpness. He held a small notebook filled with notes he'd scribbled during his phone call with the county office. "They tried to rezone your property under some loophole," Jack said. "Claimed that since your land touches a newly developed residential road, you are now part of the HOA district. That's illegal unless you sign documents agreeing to join." Pearl shook her head. "I didn't sign a single thing." "They know that," Jack said. "But they figured you'd be too old, too tired, or too confused to fight them." Pearl smiled. "They don't know your mama." Jack chuckled. "No, they don't." But the HOA wasn't backing down. 2 days later, a notice was nailed, yes nailed, to the barn door with a red seal. "Final warning. Failure to comply will result in legal escalation. It was hand-delivered by the same HOA rep, who had brought a lawyer this time. He wore a tight suit, shiny shoes, and a smirk that screamed overconfidence. "This notice gives you 10 days before we proceed with seizure filings," he said as Jack walked out to meet them. "You think you can walk into this ranch and bully a 92-year-old woman into selling her land?" Jack asked. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "No bullying. Just business. Your mother has been issued multiple documented violations. Under Community Code 38C, we're permitted to enforce compliance through property access or fines." Jack stepped forward, voice low and firm. "This land is not part of your jurisdiction. You forged signatures, manipulated zoning lines, and cut off utilities without permission. That's criminal. I've already sent everything to a friend at the state attorney's office." The lawyer hesitated. Jack narrowed his eyes. "So unless you want your firm's name printed in bold across tomorrow's paper under Elder Abuse Investigation, I suggest you leave this ranch now." For the first time, the lawyer's confidence cracked. "We'll be in touch," he said, retreating with his clipboard army. Later that night, Pearl found a small beat-up box near the barn. Taped to it was a note. "We warned you." Inside were dead chickens. Her chickens. Pearl gasped and stepped back. Jack heard her scream and came running. He opened the box and his jaw tightened. His whole body tensed. "This is war," he whispered. He spent that entire night in the living room reading land deeds, searching laws, and making calls. Pearl stayed close, watching her son turn from soldier into a legal general. By morning, Jack had a plan. "We're not just defending this ranch anymore," he told Pearl. "We're about to expose every dirty trick these HOA people have ever pulled." Pearl's voice was calm, steady. "Do what you gotta do, baby." Just then there was a knock at the door. Jack opened it. Standing outside was a woman holding a baby with tears in her eyes. "Please," she said softly. "I heard what they did to your mother. They did it to my grandfather too. Took his land. He died of stress a month later." Jack stepped aside, letting her in. Behind her, more people began showing up. An older man with a cane. A young couple holding hands. A middle-aged woman with pictures of her bulldozed garden. One by one, the victims of HOA harassment came forward. Jack looked around the room. "We're going to fight this," he said. "And we're going to win." It was 4:47 a.m. and Jack was already on the porch, sipping black coffee, scanning the dirt road like a hawk. Pearl, wrapped in a blanket, joined him a few minutes later. "Can't sleep either?" "No," Jack said. "They'll try something big today." She sat beside him, eyes on the road too. And they were right. At exactly 5:02 a.m., headlights appeared in the distance. Not one vehicle. Not two. But a fleet. 4 pickup trucks. 1 HOA security van. And behind them, a massive yellow bulldozer crawling forward like a metal beast. Jack stood up. Pearl clutched his arm. "This is it, isn't it?" she whispered. He nodded. "Let's see if they've got the guts to cross a marine today." The trucks pulled up just outside the fence line. The HOA president, Clark Renshaw, tall, thin, with salt and pepper hair and an expensive coat, stepped out of the lead vehicle like he was arriving at a business brunch. Behind him, workers in neon vests started unloading tools and unrolling orange fencing. Renshaw walked right up to Jack with that fake smile rich people wear when they think they've already won. "Mr. Carter," he said coolly, "we've come to enforce an emergency neighborhood compliance action. Your mother's barn, coop, and perimeter fences are to be demolished due to code violations that pose a hazard to nearby properties." Jack didn't blink. "You brought a bulldozer for a 92-year-old woman's barn?" Renshaw shrugged. "It's standard operating procedure. You didn't respond to our third legal notice, so this is our final step." Jack took one step forward, holding up a folder. "I did respond. You've been served." "What?" Renshaw blinked. Jack opened the folder and revealed a stack of documents. A cease and desist from the county. A formal complaint to the Attorney General. A lawsuit citing elder abuse, utility sabotage, intimidation, and falsified HOA expansion documents. Renshaw's smugness wavered. "And this," Jack continued, pulling out one last sheet, "is a temporary injunction barring any activity on this land until further review. That includes bulldozing barns." The bulldozer's engine sputtered off. Pearl, still in her blanket, leaned over and shouted, "Looks like you're gonna need a new plan, Sonny." The HOA crew stood confused. The workers put down their tools. And then, like a miracle, cars started arriving. One by one, the people Jack had rallied over the past few days came pouring in. Neighbors, farmers, retired vets, and angry homeowners. Some held signs. Stop HOA bullies. Pearl's Ranch stays. The land is our history. A local news van arrived. And then a drone appeared overhead, filming everything. Renshaw looked around, face pale now. You've just created a media storm, Jack said. And I've got proof that your entire expansion was illegal. You're bluffing, Renshaw muttered. No, Jack replied, stepping closer. You're exposed. You thought you could steamroll a little old woman. Instead, you woke up every veteran, every farmer, every person who still believes in fairness and family. Renshaw turned back to his crew, yelling for them to pack up. But the damage was done. Pearl stood and waved sweetly as the HOA convoy pulled out. Back inside the house, Jack received a call. It was from someone unexpected, a former HOA board member. I have something, the woman on the phone whispered. They lied on more than just Pearl's paperwork. They've been stealing HOA funds. I can prove it. Jack sat up straight. Can you send it to me? No, she said. I'll bring it. But you need to protect me. If they find out I'm talking. We'll protect you, Jack said firmly. Come tonight. Quietly. But Pearl was already growing suspicious. What if they try something crazier next time? She asked. Jack looked out the window. They will. That evening, Jack installed security cameras, reinforced the gates, and parked his truck directly in front of the barn. But he didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, eyes on the front door. Waiting. It was 11:47 p.m. when Jack's phone buzzed with a single message. I'm outside. Black sedan. Lights off. Jack quietly got up from the table. Pearl was asleep in her recliner, a blanket over her legs, the soft hum of her old radio crackling in the background. He gently opened the front door and slipped outside into the cool night air. Sure enough, a black sedan was parked just beyond the gravel line near the side fence, tucked in the shadows. Jack approached it with careful steps, one hand near his belt, just in case. The passenger window rolled down a crack. Jack Carter? Yes. The door opened slowly and a woman stepped out. She wore a hoodie and thick-rimmed glasses, her hair tied in a messy bun. She looked around nervously before handing him a thick, manila envelope. My name is Renee Markham. I used to be the treasurer for Broadstone Estates HOA, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They don't know I kept records. They thought I deleted everything when I left. What's in here? Jack asked. She looked him straight in the eyes. Proof that the HOA president, Clark Renshaw, embezzled over $200,000 from HOA dues. And he used fake contractors, his own companies, to bill for work that was never done. Jack's jaw clenched. There's more, Renee added. They bribed someone at the county land office to redraw the boundaries, to include this ranch and a few others. That's how they legally tricked the paperwork. Jack's eyes widened. You have names? She nodded and pointed to the envelope. All in there. Bank records. Fake invoices. Internal memos. Even voice memos he accidentally left on our shared drive. Jack took a deep breath. Why are you helping now? Renee looked away. Because my dad was a farmer. He died before they bulldozed his home too. I didn't stop it then. But maybe I can now. Suddenly, headlights lit up the road behind them. Jack shoved the envelope into his jacket and pulled Renee into the shadows behind the barn. A black SUV crawled down the road, same one he'd seen the HOA reps in before. They followed me. Renee gasped. They must have seen me leave town. Jack cursed under his breath. Stay here. He jogged to the front porch, acting casual. The SUV stopped. The window rolled down. Clark Renshaw's face appeared, expressionless. Burning the midnight oil, Mr. Carter? He said. Jack crossed his arms. Nice of you to swing by uninvited. Just keeping an eye on things, Renshaw said with a smirk. Tell your mother to expect a fresh set of fines in the morning. Before Jack could respond, Renshaw's passenger door opened. Another man stepped out, a stranger this time, bulky, with a military haircut and a deep scar across his cheek. This is Mr. Voss, Renshaw said. Private enforcement. New HOA security contractor. Jack's eyes narrowed. That's not legal. Renshaw grinned. Technically, it is, if we're protecting our investments. I'm filing a restraining order, Jack replied coldly. You're trespassing. Voss leaned in, cracking his knuckles. We'll be seeing each other real soon, soldier boy. Jack didn't flinch. You can't scare me, he said. I've faced worse than you in the desert. The SUV slowly pulled away. As it disappeared down the road, Renee came out from behind the barn, shaken. "They're not just trying to take land anymore," she said. "They're covering up a crime. And if they know I gave you that evidence." Jack nodded. "You're staying here tonight." By morning, Pearl had cooked breakfast for 3. Renee sat at the table, eyes puffy from a restless night, while Jack copied all the files onto 3 separate hard drives. One for the sheriff, one for the press, one for court. As the sun rose, the Carter Ranch no longer felt like just a family farm. It had become ground zero for a battle. Later that day, Jack marched into the sheriff's office with Renee and a folder of documents under one arm. Sheriff Douglas, a tall man with a kind face and a massive mustache, looked up from his desk. "Jack Carter. Haven't seen you since your dad's funeral." Jack set the folder down. "I need you to see this. Right now." As the sheriff flipped through the papers, his brows lifted higher and higher. "You're telling me Renshaw's been laundering HOA money through dummy contractors? And expanding into non-HOA property through bribed zoning officials?" Jack nodded. "Everything's in there. And we have the original treasurer to testify." Sheriff Douglas stood slowly. "Give me an hour. I'm calling the district attorney." Back at the ranch, Pearl watched from her porch as 2 more cars pulled into her yard. A TV news crew. Microphones. Cameras. One of them waved at her. "Ma'am? Would you be willing to speak about what the HOA has done to you?" Pearl stood tall. She adjusted her sweater, smoothed her hair, and nodded. "Let me tell you something," she said to the camera. "This land has seen storms, wars, and grief. But the biggest rats don't live in the fields. They live in those shiny boardrooms." That night, while the news story aired live, the HOA headquarters was surrounded by protesters. Homeowners waving signs, chanting for justice. Someone threw a shoe at the front door. But Jack wasn't celebrating yet. Because as the story hit the 6 o'clock news, he received a new message on his phone. "We know she gave you the files. If you don't return them by midnight, we'll make the Carter Ranch disappear. For good." It was 11:54 p.m. The air was heavy. Even the crickets had gone silent. Jack stood near the barn, eyes fixed on the dirt road leading up to the ranch. The final warning message burned in his mind. Return the files by midnight, or the Carter Ranch disappears. He had refused. Instead he prepared. Security cameras were up. Floodlights mounted. And tucked under his jacket was a small 2-way radio that crackled softly with updates from Sheriff Douglas, who had personally placed a deputy near the tree line watching. Inside the house, Pearl slept peacefully, though Jack had reinforced every window and bolted the doors. Renee was in the guest room, laptop open, still emailing files to the state attorney's office. Jack checked his watch. 11:57. And then, a low rumble. Tires crunching gravel. He crouched behind the barn, squinting toward the headlights bouncing along the dirt path. 2 black SUVs. 1 pickup truck. They stopped just outside the fence. Lights off. Engines running. 3 men stepped out, 2 in black tactical gear, 1 in a gray hoodie. From the shadows, Jack recognized him immediately. Mr. Voss. The HOA's private enforcer. They were wearing night vision goggles and gloves. They weren't here to talk. Jack whispered into his radio, "They're here. 3 on foot. Coming toward the east fence." The deputy's voice crackled back. "Got visual. Holding position. Waiting for your signal." Jack didn't respond right away. He moved fast, silent, looping behind the barn toward the chicken coop where the fence line was weakest. That's where they'd try to enter. And he was right. One of the men clipped the wire and began crawling through. Jack waited until the second one was halfway in. Then, flash. A blinding spotlight lit up the yard. Alarms shrieked. Pearl's floodlights snapped on. The whole ranch exploded in light and sound. The intruders froze, blinking. Jack stepped out from the shadows, voice loud and sharp. "On the ground. Hands where I can see them." They hesitated, but then heard the unmistakable click of a shotgun cocking behind them. Sheriff Douglas had arrived. His deputies swarmed in seconds later. "County Sheriff's Office. You're all under arrest for trespassing, breaking and entering, and attempted criminal intimidation of a senior citizen." Voss growled, tried to run. He didn't get far. Jack tackled him to the ground in one clean move. The other 2 were cuffed within minutes. Inside the house, Pearl had woken up and come to the window. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. Just stood there quietly, watching her son protect everything her husband had built. By 1 a.m. the Carter Ranch was safe. For now. The next morning, the sheriff held a press conference in front of the county courthouse. Renee stood next to Jack, now under full witness protection. The evidence she provided had opened not just one case, but three. Embezzlement by the HOA president, fraudulent property acquisition through bribery, and conspiracy to commit elder harassment and land seizure. Clark Renshaw was arrested that afternoon at his country club. The footage of Jack confronting the HOA with a spotlight and a takedown went viral. #ProtectPearl trended online. Hundreds of people from around the country wrote letters to Pearl. Some even visited. 3 weeks later, Jack and Pearl sat on the porch, sipping lemonade as a breeze rolled in through the golden fields. "You saved this place," she said, eyes glistening. "No," Jack smiled. "We did. You stood your ground." Pearl chuckled. "Well, I am a stubborn old woman." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the open sky. Then Pearl added softly, "Your father would be proud." Jack looked out over the land. "So would he."